Washington, top congressional Republicans, who have for decades resisted any legislative limits on guns, signaled on Wednesday that they would be open to banning the firearm accessory that the Las Vegas gunman used to transform his rifles to mimic automatic weapon fire. For a generation, Republicans in Congress, often joined by conservative Democrats, have bottled up gun legislation, even as the carnage of mass shootings grew ever more gruesome, and the weaponry ever more deadly. A decade ago, they blocked efforts to limit the size of magazines, after the massacre at Virginia Tech. 5 years later, Republican leaders thwarted bipartisan legislation to expand background checks of gun purchasers after the mass shooting at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. Last year, in the wake of the Orlando nightclub massacre, they blocked legislation to stop gun sales to buyers on terrorism watch lists. But in this week's massacre in Las Vegas, lawmakers in both parties may have found the part of the weapons trade that few could countenance: previously obscure gun conversion kits, called bump stocks, that turn semi-automatic weapons into weapons capable of firing in long, deadly bursts. I own a lot of guns, and as a hunter and sportsman, I think that's our right as Americans, but I don't understand the use of this bump stock, Senator John Cornyn of Texas, the number 2 Republican in the Senate, said, adding, "It seems like it's an obvious area we ought to explore and see if it's something Congress needs to act on." Mr. Cornyn said the continuing legality of the conversion kits was a legitimate question, and told reporters he had asked Senator Charles E. Grassley of Iowa, the Judiciary Committee chairman, to convene a hearing on that issue, and any others that arise out of the Las Vegas investigation. Other Republican senators, including Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Orrin G. Hatch of Utah and Marco Rubio of Florida, said they would be open to considering legislation on bump stocks. "We certainly want to learn more details on what occurred in Las Vegas," Mr. Rubio said, "and if there are vulnerabilities in federal law that we should be addressing to prevent such attacks in the future, we would always be open to that." In the House, Representative Carlos Corabello, Republican of Florida, said he was drafting bipartisan legislation banning the conversion kits. Representative Mark Meadows, the head of the Conservative Freedom Caucus, also said he would be open to considering a bill, while Representative Bill Flores, Republican of Texas, called for an outright ban. "I think they should be banned," Mr. Flores told the newspaper The Hill. "There's no reason for a typical gun owner to own anything that converts a semi-automatic to something that behaves like an automatic." In an often deadlocked Washington, none of the pronouncements guaranteed action. The National Rifle Association, which has poured tens of millions of dollars into Republican campaign coffers, remain mum on the bump stock discussion, and could stop it cold. And Eric Pratt, executive director of another gun rights group, Gun Owners of America, vowed to block any legislation. "We see this as an item that is certainly protected by the Second Amendment, and realistically, they are already on the market, so passing a law banning them isn't going to stop bad guys like this creep in Las Vegas," he said.